Well, we have a rising star who has done absolutely amazing jobs at starting from maybe a standard issue agent to, our luxury queen of queens. Right.
Mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm.
for me, it behooves me to kind of tap into that wisdom and see about what it is that makes her tick and see if she could share wisdom. Right. So
Sure.
if we could all say hello to Virginia. How you doing, Virginia?
Hi, Alex. I'm good. How are you?
It's been a hectic day, and with the change of seasons, I think things are getting quite interesting. Right.
Yeah. Well, as I said it a few times today and yesterday, we are in March Madness. The spring market is, it's starting to bloom and business is picking up. So, we're going early in the morning until late at night.
All cylinders, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All cylinders. It's busy now.
And I mean, for me, it feels like it's been interesting, right? Because I think around the time we did our first interview, I think that was around the time where you really just started picking up steam, like really started cranking it away. On the one hand, I think we all knew that you were headed for continued greatness, but I think the trajectory in which that you exploded was nothing short of amazing, right? And I know you may not be the one to want to toot your own horn here, but again, I do not take it lightly in this particular case when I think you may very well be the queen of luxury of queens.
I don't know how it happened, and I really did, take this job seriously when I started. I wanted to learn all the facets of real
Mhm.
estate. And I always say to a lot of newer agents that I feel like getting a real estate license is like getting a high school degree, right? And then as you progress in the business, you get your bachelor's, you get your master's, you get your PhD, and so on. And so, by learning from other experts in the field, and Keller Williams is great at that because we have people who've been in the industry 25 plus years and always willing to share with us their experience. My business has definitely grown because of that.
Yeah, and for me, oh no, look, I think we're all going to be curious on how you got there, but in my mind, I feel like there's this nagging bit, and now that you have agreed to have this conversation, I get to ask without guilt of asking, what do I need to understand about Virginia in order for me to understand the person that I'm looking at today?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a strong work ethic. And, I don't believe in, the word no. I believe in success, and it takes a lot of hard work and dedication and, setting goals and achieving those goals at, whatever it takes, whether it takes working 7 days a week in the beginning, which I did. I still do many weeks working long hours. But I also believe in customer service, right? So I believe in making sure that my clients are the priority, right? And me servicing them, I get a satisfaction out of that. So I think that leads to a lot of success because people really can tell if you're genuine or
Hmm.
not, or if you just, you're just doing this as a job, which it is as well. But when you care about people, I think that comes through. So I think there's a two-tone factor there. It's wanting to be successful and wanting to make it to the top, but also caring about people. And that actually helps grow your
But
business.
where does that come from? I mean, I don't imagine this. That you just woke up one day as an agent and said, "This is the way I want to do my business." Right? I get the sense that this is somewhere deeply ingrained.
You know what? I don't, I've always been like that. I think that, both my parents were very hardworking when they came to this country. My father had his own business, and as my mother as well. And so I think they were great role models to me. Seeing them, going after the American
Hmm.
dream also made me want to go after the American dream. So I think a lot of it is that, and a lot of it is born in you. I mean, I don't know, what makes other people tick, but I know that I want to do the best that I can in life. That's the legacy that I want to leave.
And speaking of legacy, it is my understanding that you have at least one child, right?
Yeah, two actually. I have a son and a daughter.
Okay. And at this juncture, I know you don't look it, but You are a mother of two grown children, isn't it? Is that true? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I oftentimes I find that there are, especially around that time, I feel like a lot of my old heads, they not I'm not calling you old, by the way, just to be clear, but
Okay.
have a lot of friends who tend to be in their 50s, 60s, and a little bit up, and people laugh at me. They're like, "How are they your friends?" They're I'm like, I don't know. That's just how I grew up, right? But there are often times where like when I look at my kid, their kids are like in their 20s, late 20s, 30s at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like I sometimes think about the things that I know now, and obviously my kids don't want to hear it because mom and dad are just not cool enough. But
Mm-hmm.
I think about the things I would have told myself, my younger self,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there are going to be some things here that if you were to write it out in a diary, or actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe it should be a book,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I mean, start wherever you want, right? But what are some of the things that you would have told your younger self?
Right. And you brought up some things, Alex, that actually, I are some of my goals that I do want to do. I would like to write a book. And, a lot of times I do think, I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have known this back then when I was in my 20s, when I was in my 30s. Um, why did it take me so long to realize that this would have probably put me in a different place? Not that I'm happy in my life. I'm in a good place, right? But it would have made my life a lot easier, right? And a lot of that thinking is shaped by books that I've read, experiences that I've had, people that I've met. Um, you know, Unfortunately, sometimes you don't realize it till you're a lot older in life. But one of the things, that I would have told my younger self is invest in real estate, right, at an early age. But don't, and the biggest thing is don't necessarily buy your first house. Okay. And a lot of people are going to say, like, why? Like, that isn't that the American dream, to get married, buy a house, have kids, two kids and a dog. Because we don't realize how much we can leverage when we buy an investment property. And that investment property is one day will allow you to buy multiple investment properties and your own home. But sometimes we're conditioned to think that buying our house is the first step. Um, I would not have done that, had I known everything that I know now.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about the things that you don't know, and
Mm-hmm.
the things you don't know that you don't know, right? And if I'm being honest, I feel like that is making a comeback. That particular sentiment, which is interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
actually, I didn't expect you to make that particular statement, but I think it's where, if for me in my space in my mind, the way I wrap my head around things is nowadays is you could complain about how the boomers have ruined everything for us, and the inflation is this, our paycheck is that. Da, 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 da. Look, I'm not going to argue fairness or unfairness. Right? For me, it doesn't matter. Now, obviously, in my young years, I was like, this isn't fair. Da, da, da. But when I had a mentor, he goes, "Look, Alex, you're a good kid, right? But if you take out fairness, right? What's right, what's wrong, what's fair, what's not fair. At the end of the day, what changes?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I mean, it'll change, right? According to whose standards, right? So rather than spending time crying, because I'm sorry, you're a good kid, look, I love you, but you're complaining. Rather than you spending time of going on the internet, crying about this and a third, let's go figure out what can you do to figure out a way out of this hole, right? Because one way or another, whether you like it or not, it's still here. The problem's still here. Solve it, right? And that's going to be the difference. You'll see as you get older, the difference between those who succeed and those who stay where they are or worse.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you take it to that
I like
extent, for
that.
me, the other side of it is you can't afford your primary home. Why? Because you live in New York,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're looking at $900,000 property, right, and that's not exactly Taj Mahal, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be in a situation currently right now, like you might be looking at a $7,000 mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
right? $7,000 mortgage. Or do you bring in? Is that going to be more than enough to cover? No, most likely not. Right? I make six figures, and that's not in the books. So what do you do, right? And so as I talk to these, look, it's very simple. You might not be able to afford $900,000, right? And the mortgage that comes with a $900,000 house.
Right.
But I promise you, if you go down south, there's houses that you could buy for 200 grand, right?
Exactly.
Right. If not 200 grand, 300 grand, right? And in my ignorant brain, I'm thinking, I'm not buying a trail park. Like, that's stupid. He goes, dumbass. You're with your lens here, but you also understand things operate different elsewhere. Travel more, learn yourself something, right? Get the ignorance out of your system. Which, of course, at that age, I'm thinking, I'm like, this old man, give me crap and da 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 da. He goes, let me break out simple math. $300,000. Let's say you put 50 grand of work into it, right? $400,000. Now, again, where most people get lost here is you assume you bought market value and then you put 50,000, and then now you have to deal with all that additional math. No, work out a deal, reverse engineer. At what point does the price point have to be when after you fix up, you still makes mathematical sense, right? This is where people get lost. Now you have
Right.
income, someone else paying the mortgage, right? You build equity because things get better. Real estate gets more expensive. If you're not paying, your CPA, Alex, you should learn this. So this should make sense to you. When you depreciate, even though the property actually makes money, it shows you have a loss, which means tax-free
100%.
money.
100%.
Right.
100%.
So he's like, look, now let's do. Now you're also in finance, right, Alex? Yeah. No, so let's do some basic math. If you compound interest 3% on average, and then you add in all the other factors, your equity builds. Did you put another dime into it? Probably not, right? So he goes, look, you do this, rinse and repeat. The first two properties, I promise you, it's likely not going to be impressive, but exponential growth, right? So this is why I went from one property to 5 in 3 years.
Right.
It's a lot of work, because if that was the case, this wouldn't make sense. Everyone's going to be in it. Now, after 5 years, I got to a situation where a few more years after that, I again still got lucky, but I took equity. I took that equity and cash out refied, right? I pulled out $100,000, Alex. I'm like, yeah, but in my ignorant brain, I'm thinking, well, I mean, you still got to pay that back. I have to pay it back, or my tenants do.
Your tenants, exactly.
And it goes, your CPA brain should have realized it also, but this is not income, Alex. Why? It's a loan. I loaned myself money that my tenants are paying down. That the market will, God willing, that the market will still continue to appreciate my house. So now I got in a situation where I got these properties, and guess what? Where do you think I bought my house with? I cash out, refi, right? And I bought my dream house, right? All the rentals, the 300,000 I put in, and the marble tiles, and the. That was my W-2 job. Those are my properties, Alex. Use your CPA brain and let's learn, right? But again, look, I'm telling you this because you're a good kid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted my time.
Excellent advice.
And
Well, that's exactly where I was going with that. I mean, you actually answered, you actually said everything that I was going to say. So I guess that person who's your mentor really gave you great advice, because I was going to say the problem is that here in New York City, we're in one of the wealthiest states where the cost of living is very expensive. So for, the middle class, who's not trying to buy real estate, it's very difficult. However, there's other states. I mean, I just came back from Florida, and I'm looking to invest down there. And you can buy a 2-bedroom condo for in the $200,000 price range. That's $200,000 condo can pay out anywhere between $4,000 and $5,000 a month. All right, so as a rental, and who goes down to Florida,
that,
right? A lot of snowbirds. And a lot of people who want a vacation there. So now if we take that $5,000 a month, let's say, on a yearly basis, you're talking about $60,000. When everything is said and done, you may be able to have like a $48,000 profit a year. You're talking about $4,000 a month. Who could not, right? Who wouldn't want to have an extra $4,000 a month in their pockets?
and
Right? That's one. And if you continue to leverage, that, and like, your mentor said, in a couple of years you can pull out money, equity, because now the price of the property has gone up, right? Now you're pulling out more money. Now you're buying more. Before you know it, you're building a little, conglomerate of properties that you own. You're building wealth. You're young, but 10 years goes by, 20 years goes by, 30 years go by. Now you want to slow down, but you have all this income coming in, right? So now you don't, even though you have a retirement and a pension and maybe Social Security, here we know the cost of living in America is expensive, right? And sometimes people can't, even sustain with all of those buckets. But if you have all these investment properties with income coming
Hmm.
in, wow, that light bulb went off and said, I wish I would have done that, 20 years ago, 30
Hmm.
years ago, and continue to build an empire.
One of the things that I've seen is that the younger generations, in a way, they have kind of given up in protest, and that you could see the argument both sides, right? Obviously, we have the traditional thing of stop buying your coffees, stop your avocado toast, stop buying your Chanel
Mm-hmm.
bags, stop buying your new, you don't need the latest, greatest cell phone. I get
Mm-hmm.
that. And unfortunately, advice from generations prior of, hey, save your money, make more money, put 20% down, right? And all this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, there's no realm where this makes sense. Like it doesn't math.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, as realtors, right, I think by this point, I feel like we realize there are other solutions. But the thing, I feel for me, the biggest crux is education. There is none. If you don't know, that's not a problem really. If you can find someone who can
Mm-hmm.
get it done for you, right? Like it's a war room squad, or if you want to call it your team, whatever, right? Like whatever makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
how, I mean, even if it's not on the investment space portion of it, like how important has your team been in these past few years? Because I know that you did bust your ass, right? But I imagine there has
Mm-hmm.
been some mentoring or some advice and guidance that has happened along the way.
Yeah, no, I mean this office is great. Like I said earlier, we have agents who've been there 30 plus years, and everybody goes back. So anytime you have any issues, you have people who are there to support you, or anytime that, the economy is changing and, there's a little bit of a slump in real estate, we're there to pick each other up, to help, help us through, some of the difficult times. And you need that in this business because it's a tough business. It's not a business where every week you get a paycheck, right? I mean, we may get a nice paycheck, but it takes from the time you get a listing to the time you get to the closing table, it's a good 3 months. So, you have to learn how to budget and make it work for you. But no, I mean, points that you talked about are excellent. I'm really happy to hear that somebody gave you the advice that I wanted to give my younger self. I mean, I am fortunate that me and my husband did buy an investment property many years ago. The only thing we never leveraged it because we got caught up in raising our family and, making sure that our kids went to good schools and did all the sports with them. So, we kind of lost focus on the long-term plan, which was to continue to build, our equity. But had I maybe had listened to a podcast or listened to somebody or read a book about, building your wealth, I would have said, wait a minute, what are we doing? We need to leverage. We need to continue buying. And if we can't buy here in New York because the cost of real estate is too expensive, let's look somewhere else. Let's look in Florida. Let's look in Texas. Let's look in the Carolinas. Let's look now. I think Colorado is like the new big state where people are going and investing in real estate. We don't have to limit ourselves to one, to the state that we live in. That's a misnomer. So,
Absolutely.
but it sounds like you received that advice, and I definitely would love to share that advice with, the listeners today.
And look, it works. And I guess for me, it's a double-edged sword, I suppose, right? Because I will forever be incessantly, almost obsessively curious about like everything.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. And listen, like I just came back from Florida and I was doing some research down there. I had gone to go see some
mhm.
properties, and there's a lot of property in
Oh yeah.
Florida. It's a big state. You got the East Coast, you got the West Coast, you got the southern
Mhm.
part of Florida, the northern part of Florida, and it's definitely a big vacation
Oh
spot
yeah.
for many
Oh,
Americans.
absolutely. I mean, like one of the other like jobs or work that I do, it involves particularly the R&D tax credit, right? And so a good portion of my job also entails studying markets, studying. But as I see shifts in markets, for me, it becomes interesting as a realtor and a tax person of like, hey, what other ramifications could we look at, right? And the beauty now, I think, is that, the information that we did not have readily available 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it's simple Google search now. Like, for instance, obviously, STRs or short term rentals have been like the hot topic for the last few years, especially, right? And the townships or jurisdictions that are now saying, you know what, we don't want this in our backyard, or NIMBY, you know,
Mm-hmm.
from a layman, that's like, oh my God, that's it, we're done. Like, we lost the grave chain left. No, no, ask somebody, right? Do a Google search,
Mm-hmm.
right? If STRs don't work, what do I do, right? And
Okay.
for instance, in Florida, if for instance your rentals, if you want to do a little more work, but you have, you do need also maybe better earning potential, look into midterm rentals, right? What, Alex, what is a midterm
Mm-hmm.
rental? Short-term rentals
Mm-hmm.
are 30 days or less, right? And
Right.
so a
Right.
lot of townships, or a lot of, for down south, maybe you call it parishes, right? But they might disallow short-term rentals, but midterm rentals, which is 30 days or more, but less than a year,
Right.
right? Those
Mm-hmm.
are, that is usually the hack, right? So traveling nurses, traveling
That
clinicians, and
a hundred
right.
percent.
And where the other thing most people forgot was, what about construction companies? What about, right? Like, what about insurance claims, right? If a storm rolls by, or someone's, God forbid, someone's house burns down, they have proper house insurance, right? Well, the family has to go somewhere. And there are insurance
Mm-hmm.
companies that will place a family in a like client home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you provide the services, and even though the price might be higher, the insurance company pays out so that the family can stay somewhere that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So please
Mm-hmm.
don't be slumlord, but it's just, but it is a service you provide, and you get paid accordingly for it. So they're
Mm-hmm.
moves, right? And I guess for me, ultimately, it's, if you don't know, if you ever feel like you're stuck, find someone who might have the answers, and go find out that way. Like, if I guess this is the advice I'll tell my younger self: if there is a problem, there's a solution, or someone has the answer. So rather than
Mm-hmm.
assuming that you're stuck, find out the who, the how, and the when. Right? There's
Right.
always a who,
Right.
how, or
Right.
when.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But I mean, here I am rattling. With what else? I mean, if what else would you have told yourself? If I mean, you did tell me your age, and I still have a hard time buying that line. But
Um, you know what? Never forget about yourself in the process, right? Because, a lot of times when you're single and, you have all the time in the world, you can do whatever it is that you want. But then once you get married and have a family, and I would never have done it any other way, you dedicate a lot of your time and energy to your kids and your family. However, I kind of feel like we should never forget about ourselves, our what interests us and what makes us happy and what we enjoy, because a lot of times the years go by so quickly, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I stopped skiing, or I stopped snowboarding, I stopped playing tennis, I stopped playing racquetball, I stopped running. um, don't do it. Make sure you always leave some time in the week for yourself and for your hobbies and things that you enjoy, because I know I did. And then I was like, wow, I missed out. I had like a good 20 years where I stopped playing tennis. I stopped going to the gym. Um, and it's easy to stop because it seems like there's not enough hours in the day. But I also think that if you take that 1 hour, once a day or 45 minutes, even if it's 3 or 4 times a week, you're going to feel better about yourself, and everything else just won't be as taxing, right?
mhm.
So that it took me some time because I stopped going to the gym for so many years, and it took me some time to build my stamina again, because you don't realize how out of shape you get from not exercising, strength training, But luckily, I have gone back into it. So I remember just like climbing 3 sets of stairs, I would be out of breath. Well, now I can climb 3 sets of stairs, and I'm fine. I'm not like huffing and puffing, but yeah, if you stop, it's hard to get back into it again. So that's why it's important. We got to take care of ourselves and our health, and so yeah. So I guess that answers that
Mhm.
question. But yeah, I haven't. I'm able to still do everything pretty much that I did, but once you stop, it takes some time to get back to a peak level.
Yeah, I mean, that one I could understand from a very visceral level. And yeah, I feel like well, maybe it's just because my conditioning is not there anymore. But I do notice it's different. It's like I guess it's because of the RPMs that I used to be able to run at. Like, whatever
Uh-huh.
it is that I used to, whether it be snowboarding, handball, or like, I know for a fact I can't get there. So I guess there's a small part of me that's like, damn, like, I should have enjoyed it a little more while I could have. Right?
Right, I should have stopped. Maybe I should have just went twice a week instead of 5 times a week. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
So far, I'm hearing that there is that financial setup end, right? And, I think it falls in line with, the best time to invest was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. And
Right, 100%. Like, don't let that go because, even though you could have, should have, would have,
mhm,
you still can right now.
mhm,
And then, hopefully you will see the benefits of it long term. But if you don't do it, if you just regret and stay stuck in that position, saying, "Oh, I should have done that,"
yeah,
but then you don't do anything about it, you're not going to get to that point where you'll be able to get some benefit from your investment.
absolutely. On the off chance, and this could be a shameless plug, I suppose, for those who don't know exactly where to start, I think down below there should be a referral link to Webull if you want some free stocks, and there's also probably going to be one for SoFi if you want to set up your high yield savings account. And so,
Hmm.
for those who are lost in the weeds on that particular thing, most banks will not give you. You'll be lucky if you get 1% on your money, right? So, for $100, you
Hmm.
might get $1. Whereas SoFi, if the top end that I have currently is 4.6%, which means for every month it gives me a nice little interest payment for leaving my bank with them or monies. So,
Nice.
links down below.
It's great.
But I think everyone has to start somewhere, and I mean, side note, I think this would be for another day. But thankfully, there have been changes in the tax regulations to help people really kind of try, make it somewhat easier to keep their head above water. For instance, the 401ks, you can now have the contribution go towards your student loans, which is
Hmm.
amazing. For those people who have been stuck debating on whether we should start a family or not, and how we going to, afford Johnny's college tuition,
Hmm.
the 529 plan, which is your college fund, they made it now so that if you end up not using it, you can actually convert a chunk of that to your Roth IRA if it so happens you end up not using it. So again,
That's
it's
nice.
there are moves, right? And I think again this goes right back into please don't think there's no hope. We just have to find the who, the how, and the when.
I like that.
And so tell me about your younger years, right? Because you did have some thoughts in terms of I wish I invested more, right? Like how were your spending habits in your, let's say in your 20s?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was your typical American who wants to go out, have a good time, have dinners, vacations, and that was another thing. I mean, you mentioned about, some Roth IRAs and other investment. I wish I had heard this from someone in my office who I have a lot of respect for, Rich Nails. I don't know if you've met him, but Rich always believes that when you get paid, you should have like 4 or 5 buckets, right? One bucket is, your savings account. One bucket should be your travel account. One bucket should be, your investment account, um, your bills, and so on. And so, if we had done that, like if we all have would do that every single time we get paid, even if it's like, even if you're only putting like $20 towards your vacation and, you're paying yourself $20 and $20 toward investment, if you add that up over the years, if you go and, invest in the stock market, mutual funds, whatever it may be, you're going to grow that, over time. Um, so yeah, I was spending everything that I made. I never saved. I saved, but very little.
Hmm.
So, I was your typical American, going out, uh, going and buying fancy clothes, spending time with friends, and had I learned that lesson early on, I think that, I could have also had, greater accounts. I haven't done bad for myself. I mean, I am, you know, I, I'm not saying that broke because I do have retirement funds and things like that. But I think I could have done it a little better.
Mhm.
I love that approach of having several buckets and putting money into separate accounts.
And at what point would you say that you started to like really starting to wise up of like, hey, I can't keep spending my paycheck before it even clears the bank account. Like, at what point would you say that was?
I actually, just like you said, you had a mentor.
Mhm.
I remember working, I used to work at a school for deaf children. While I was going to college, going for my master's, I was working in an office as a secretary. And I remember talking to an older lady who said, I'm no longer just buying clothes and spending money on myself. Now I'm learning to save money for the future. And I think that was like an eye opener because somebody was actually giving me advice about something that she was doing. And I was like, well, you know what? I like that. Maybe I should start, investing more money into the future. And that's again, you hear it from somebody who's giving you advice about somebody who's older than you. And I always think that talking to older people um, always makes us wiser,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because um, they share their knowledge. So
Well, I mean, I feel like, especially when you're in your teens, particularly, I feel like it's really hard to hear that, right? It's always like the you don't understand, you were
yeah,
18, but like what, when the dinosaurs roamed the planet, right? And I'm starting to get that now from the young whippersnappers. But
yeah,
I feel like as you get older, there are certain things that still, if even if it doesn't like 100% relate, there's like at least a rhyme that seems to fall into place, doesn't it?
yeah. I don't, if somebody plants that seed and somebody tells you, listen, you should do
Hmm.
this, right? And you may not be ready to accept it, but you know what? They gave you that information and you do store it
Hmm.
somewhere. And then all of a sudden that light bulb goes off and you're like, you know what? That makes sense.
You
Um,
might not understand it now, but it does, right?
right. Exactly.
So I guess for me, there's you know, so we did touch on the where maybe we should heed the advice of our elders. There is the bit of save while you're young, but there's,
Hmm.
for me, there's also that factor of, well, I need money to save money, right? So if you were to go back and talk to your, when your younger self, the little girl that was just trying to figure out how to maybe buy the next hot car to go to the beach with my friends, right? How would you kind of mentor them through, you know, finding your path to success?
Okay, so you know what? You have to find something that you love, right? In order to be successful, I think you have to find that passion that find that job that gives you passion that you love because then it doesn't seem like a job anymore, right? Then it's like it doesn't even feel like you're working. It feels like you're doing something and then that actually brings success, right?
Hmm.
But not only that, I think your mindset, like I wish I would have had like that positive mindset that says, you know what, wake up every morning, be grateful, right? Wake up every morning, count your blessings. Wake up every morning and say, I'm going to do the best that I can. Because I think when you have all this positivity in your mind, you can't help but be successful, right? But if you wake up every morning and you're like, oh, I got to go to work today. Oh, it's raining. Oh, why do I have to work? That all like that just dampens you and doesn't let you shine. But when you feel good about yourself and when you tell yourself positive thoughts, you shine. So just go out there and find what you love, do what you love, and that's going to bring you success. I mean, that's what I feel. I wish that I could have had. I mean, I was always happy and I was always working, but I didn't know how to become successful through my mindset. That brings you so much success in life, I think. Anyway.
Well, but then again, you picked a field where the burnout rate is over 90%, and the few that do remain, I feel like the maybe even if it's not a majority, a good portion of them bring themselves to drink themselves to numb the pain, right? So it's like, what is it about this field that you find that you love?
I love meeting people. You meet so many different people and facets of life, right? Like I had a client who was a chef in the White House. She was a pastry chef and she made all the desserts of President Clinton and President Bush. She was such a fascinating woman, right? So, I meet so many different people in my career. I met a woman who sold
Hmm.
diamonds, and she was an expert, diamond setter, and an expert in the field. I mean, and these are like, to me, not that I'm saying that I don't meet successful men, but because I'm a woman, I love to meet women who have been successful in their careers and have such interesting careers. And that's what I love. I love meeting different people and then, helping them with one of the biggest assets in their life. Because when you're selling $1 million home, to me, that I'm sure that's one of the biggest assets in their life. Um, and I enjoy doing it.
Well,
So you're right, there is a high burnout level in this field.
hmm.
But again, you have to stay positive and you have to wake up every morning saying, I'm going to be successful, because I believe what you tell yourself
Hmm.
is who you're going to become.
That's fair, right? And I feel like there's a level of control and discipline there, right? Because there's always something to be said depending if you want to go with there's an old Japanese story, but I'm sure there's always something in the stoicism field as well. But it's at the end of the day,
Mhm.
do you let the external affect you, or do you take whatever the world gives or universe gives and still figure out your way forward to succeed and win? I think I'm gonna want to pick even if it's off air, some of the more interesting characters that you bump into. But what about
Mhm.
the not so joyful moments, right? Like whether it be difficult people, or unpleasant situations, or just times of hardship. Like how would you kind of coach yourself through that in your younger years?
So, it's funny that you say that, because right now I'm dealing with a couple of difficult people, and difficult in the way that I say that they're negative, they're depressed, they're unhappy, and no matter what you say, no matter what you do, you're not good enough, you're not right enough. And it's not, everybody's wrong. It's not them. So, in my younger self, like, um, I took it very hard. I wasn't able to deal with it. It really bothered me. And I would say to myself, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I get out of this? But now, I just realize that it's not me, it's them, right? They're the ones with the problem. And you know what? I have this saying that I tell a lot of my clients. This is supposed to be a happy, I want this to be a happy moment in your life. I want selling your house and moving on to the next, whether it's downsizing or upsizing or moving out of the state. This is supposed to be a great time in your life, and I want to make it a great experience. So to me, that's my mindset. We're gonna make this work for you. But it takes maturity to be able to see that, it's not your fault. It's their situation and their way of thinking, and not let it affect us. Because before, when I was younger, I did let it affect me. I would get upset, I would go home, I would, be in a terrible mood, or and now I'm like, wait a minute, I have to protect myself at all costs, because, I'm trying to do the best that I can
Was it
here.
like a particular light bulb moment, or was it just like a I'm done, like I'm not dealing with this?
That's so funny, because I didn't know how to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not dealing with this. I just took it in. And I think we learn through experience. And then we say to ourselves, wait a minute, I didn't have to go through all of that. I could, if I had, would have just realized that, like the yin and the
Hmm.
yang, there's always going to be the good and the evil, right? But, you know, we can't get attached to the evil, just stay with the good,
Fair enough.
right?
And speaking of relationships and in the company that you hold, well, let's go with the one that's I would argue is probably nearest and dearest next to your children, right? So
Mm-hmm.
somehow you and your spouse have managed to stay together through
Mm-hmm.
thick and thin, clearly, and through children and the chaos that that comes with it, right?
Of life.
So any words of advice for you know whether it be dating, marriage, or any in that arena?
Right. So, you know what? The grass is never green. Like, we always think the grass is always greener on the other side. Listen, it's not. It's you have to learn communication is the biggest key to say to a
Mhm.
marriage, right? Being able to express yourself and be honest and letting the person
Mhm.
know how you feel, and at the same time listening,
Mhm.
right? As much as somebody can, listening and trying to understand, and trying to put yourself in that person's shoes,
Mhm.
right? I think is like that's the key to success in any relationship, but especially in marriage, right? Because that's the person we spend the most time with, I hope. And yeah, it's communication is big.
Is
That's
there like a particular hack that you have figured out in your years of marriage
uh,
to your particular man?
listen, there were many times when, you know, we didn't want to talk to each other because we were mad and, you know, like living in the same house and walking past each other and not saying a word. But you know, listen, my husband has a great sense of humor, so I think that, you know, lighten things up because life is serious.
Mhm.
So you want some jokes around and, you know, lightens things up. So
There's
that could be that.
there's a charm to you too. It's like Greece meets something like more picturesque in a way. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something very charming about you too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
She's like,
That's-
well, not so charming behind behind closed doors.
I'm trying to think, yeah, I'm trying to think how many years we're married now. It's going on 27 years. So, um,
I mean, at that point,
you know.
I guess for you, it might be like this is my day in day out. Charm, what charm?
No, but I've heard that. I've heard people say that we make a nice couple. So,
Well, I mean, I would hope, right? I mean, I think it's one of those things where I think anything that is client facing, especially at that degree, and especially where we are very quite often in like intimate, like we see the intimate relationships that happen, right? Like between the spouses, between, right? And as a CPA, when I worked at the tax office, it was the same thing. But I feel like when couples, even within like the first hour, if not sooner, that like you
mm-hmm.
usually get a sense of like, oh, they're not jiving, like they're not, like, and I clear as
Right.
day, I do remember there were a couple instances where I think it was with like the first 5-10 minutes, like you could tell if it was just an argument or like, oh, they're probably gonna get divorced in the next like 3 years, like, oh no.
Sense it. You can sense that
Yeah,
there's friction.
yeah, and there's a it's for me, I guess it's one of those like endearing, almost envious thing where especially I would say beyond that second decade, if and usually I feel like it's not the couple that notices it, but it's
Hmm.
like the bystanders. Like there
Hmm.
still seems to
Hmm.
be that slight tinge of like a gleam in your eye.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
He's like, oh, that jerk, or like that old bat, like, right. But I'm like, they look over a little bit. I'm like, see, it's right there, right there, right there. I caught you. Like, but
That's cute.
there,
That's cute.
so you've managed, I would argue, successfully, a marriage of 30 years going on.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you've been through thick and thin. But there's also your external groups, right? So
Hmm.
what has you been what has been your approach to managing or curating your circles,
Hmm. You mean with friends and family?
friends, families, colleagues, like business partners or mentors, like the whole spiel.
So you know what? I didn't realize this, but we always tend to want to be around, you know, like-minded people,
Hmm.
right? Because we want to be around people who we have things in common with, whether it's, you know, values, morals, right?
Hmm.
Um, Ways of living. Because you know, if there's no way I could hang out with like a party animal at this point in my
Hmm.
life, right? Or even when I was younger, that was not me. Yeah, I like to go out, I like to have fun, but I think we always surround ourselves. But, you know, again, you have to take time for your marriage, for your children, for yourself, and also for your friends, because that's what makes, you know, a healthy person.
Hmm.
If you don't have that, then it's like kind of feel that you're not complete, right?
Hmm.
And then you might have resentment later on. So,
Has there been, well, I mean, I guess for me it's just a matter of like there are points in time where people get added, people remove themselves somehow, sometimes quite frankly, right? Like how was there a point in time where you made an active decision, or did just kind of things naturally fall into place in terms of like who stays and who goes and things of that nature?
Yeah. Well, if I guess when you have somebody and you start noticing like they could either be jealous or, you know, you don't have any more things in common anymore, or somebody's like, if you ever, I remember having a friend, a lifelong friend, and she was like, started cheating on her husband. And I felt so uncomfortable. I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I don't like that. Like that doesn't make me feel good. Like, what happened to that
Hmm.
friend? Um, I mean, I try to give advice, but then you just feel like you kind of like don't have. I'm not going to not be her friend, but I kind of felt like I was not no longer. She didn't have the same values that I did in my life,
Hmm.
right? So then it's like you kind of start drifting away. I kind of
Hmm.
feel like because it all depends. Look, I never blame anybody for anything because I feel like people have their own
Hmm.
situations, but
It's just a matter of like if as long as I guess it's more of like an intuitive thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's.
it doesn't feel good, and you're like, oh, I don't know, like some things doesn't feel right to
Hmm.
me, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I could. I think for me, I got to that point of like, I think oftentimes people try to find right, wrong, good, bad, and sometimes things just
Hmm.
is. Things just are,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
I guess a good part of it for me would have been for self-preservation reasons. Um,
Hmm.
I noticed that there have been often times where I might get hung up on something because I would self-judge harshly.
Hmm.
I didn't.
Hmm.
Well, I guess part of me would argue maybe not harsh enough, but that's the you know I'm working through that. But certain things is like you don't always need to place judgment of
Right.
what you're doing is
Yeah,
good,
no,
right? It just is.
I never place judgment. I just, you know what, if things don't start feeling
Hmm.
right, you just, I don't know, automatically, you just kind of like, you could see like you might drift
Hmm.
away, but that doesn't mean that I'm thinking that that person is like less of a
No, no,
person,
and life's too short,
you know.
right?
Life is too short. Exactly,
And I
100%.
know that cliche. It's very very cliche, right? But
Mm.
it's like I feel like it becomes more prevalent, or I feel it more as I've become more busy, right? Like because
Mhm.
one of the things as I was growing up, it's and again, please give me some uh give me some wiggle room here because I was young and stupid, right? But
Exactly, exactly,
but
exactly.
there's a point in my life where like if you were crying or complaining about things
Hmm.
that I thought of as nonsense, I
Hmm.
thought of it as a weakness because you lived too soft. Like you were
Hmm.
like, oh, must be so hard because your parents won't give you, that $50 allowance because oh, woe is me. Like, dude, like grow up. Like you're being a baby, right?
Right,
But
right, right.
as you get older, you realize that a hurt people, right? And it's not it doesn't serve you, right? For like, why are you wasting like if you are spending that much time and effort judging and talking
Hmm.
smack and all this, like maybe you should focus on being more busy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Exactly,
focus on your
exactly.
successes,
Try your energy, put your energy in something else,
right?
right?
And that was, I mean, for me, as now it turns into things like, look, it's a judgment on them. No, like if anything, you should be happy that if it was the case where they had
Hmm.
not a
Hmm.
terribly harsh life, like that's a
Hmm.
blessing in itself.
Hmm.
Why are you being bitter about that? Right? And
Right.
I had to really think through that for a little bit. I'm like, I think it's and to be clear, it's not like I had some kind of like terrifyingly like treacherous life by any stretch, but
Hmm.
and I think it's coming to peace with like everyone has a path that they took and the path that they're on,
Hmm. Hmm.
and if you're gonna take that time to sit there and try to pass judgment or put
Hmm.
this holier than thou, I think that you are at the very bare minimum misguided. But on the other hand, I'm thinking you should probably do figure out what your next step for success should be because I think you're wasting a lot of
Hmm.
time.
Hmm. Exactly, exactly.
Uh,
So,
But
all right. Well,
I
that's
think I picked your brain quite a bit here.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
any last particular bits before we go?
No, I definitely, maybe we could do part two on another night. I just definitely have a lot more insight that I like to share with some of the viewers.
Absolutely. Well, for those who are curious, why don't you do us a favor and let us know where to find you?
Sure. Well, I can definitely be reached at Virginia Ballistic at
Hmm.
kw.com. And my number is 917-428-1759. Um, I'm always ready to sell real estate. I'm ready to help that next buyer, purchase their new property.
All right, perfect. Well, there you guys have it. And we will see about picking your brains some other time. But in the meantime, thank you for your time.
Mhm. Thank you,
If
Alex.
you
Thanks.
have any questions, make sure you reach out to Virginia. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.